The following may contain offensive language, adult humor, and or content that some viewers may find offensive. The views and opinions expressed by any one speaker does not explicitly or necessarily reflect or represent those of Mark Radulich or W2M Network. Please listen with caution, or don't listen at all.
TV party tonight! What? TV party tonight!
Oh, we got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews.
Don't want to talk about anything else.
We don't want to know.
We're dedicated to our favorite shows!
Oh, my tickets!
Everybody loves Hippo Toad.
Scary dog!
Pearson and Blurnsball.
Futurama!
Good evening. You are listening to a Radulich and Broadcasting premiere podcast, TV Party Tonight. I'm your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And tonight, our favorite show is Disenchantment. Disenchantment is an American animated fantasy sitcom created by Matt Groening for Netflix. This series is Groening's first production to appear exclusively on a streaming service. He previously created The Simpsons and Futurama for Fox. Set in the fictitious medieval fantasy kingdom of Dreamland, this series follows the story of Bean, a rebellious alcoholic princess, as well as her naive elf companion Elfo and her destructive personal demon Luci. It stars the voices of Abbi Jacobson, André, Nat Faxon, John DiMaggio, Tress MacNeille, Matt Berry, David Herman, Maurice LaMarche, Luci Montgomery, and Billy West. This is part 5, which debuted on Netflix September 1st of 2023. It is brought to you by the good people at the company. And joining me tonight from the also in the company, ladies and gentlemen, normally he's my co-host with the most from Damn You Hollywood. Ladies and gentlemen, straight out of Compton, Robert Winfree. How do you do, sir?
Not straight out of Compton.
Okay.
And because I'm not coming out of Compton, I think everything's better.
And ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the show, Big Daddy, Daddy-O, the disapproving dad, the new disapproving dad light, diet disapproving dad, if you will. Ladies and gentlemen, David Wright. How do you do, sir?
Well, I'm a little shocked. When you started babbling incoherently, I assumed you were talking about Canada.
Okay. It has been so long since I watched part 4 and we reviewed it, Disenchantment. When I tuned in to watch part 5, I honestly had no clue what was happening. I was just like, oh, okay.
That's a common theme with this show.
Yeah.
It's a fairly common theme with Mark, yes.
Yeah. Didn't they even lampshade it in the actual season?
Yeah,
A little bit.
There's a character that will, whenever there's like rabble outside the castle, you know, who just kind of sticks his head out the window. And it's like, I have questions about the plot of this, you know, and just goes on and on. He sort of breaks the fourth wall.
And then he's inevitably shot by a flaming arrow.
Yeah, every single time. He made me laugh a couple of times this season because they did that gag quite a few. But yeah, we are continuing from part 4 where there was an evil bean and a good bean, and evil bean's head was removed from the rest of its body, and Dagmar needs both pieces to do all the evil in the world.
Yeah, bean's the key to everything.
Yeah, so let's just get right into it. I have no TikTok preamble. What do you think of this season, Robert?
It's a little up and down. Watching this one, I got the feeling that they had, and I think like when they storyboarded this out, they had 3 seasons in mind, and which would translate to 6 parts. Because when Netflix breaks these things up into parts, it's like half a season, the other half, and that would be the first season, would be parts 1 and 2. This is the same with a lot of their other stuff. If you watch like The Ranch, it's broken up this way, and again, a lot of their productions, not all, but a lot. And I feel like they had a general idea about, again, 6 of these individual parts that would have comprised 3 seasons, and they got told, you get 5. And they went, okay, so part 5 winds up condensing a lot of stuff that I feel like they had planned another like 6-7 episodes to kind of smooth out the overall ride. And
See,
well,
I'm fascinated by that take, because to me this felt like they dragged the story out. Like they didn't have enough story to cover 10 episodes, even at 22 minutes long. And like, you know, Bean stays separate from Elfo and Mop Girl and Luci. So she kind of has her own thing going on, and they have their own thing going on. And it takes about halfway through the season before they all meet up again, and there's the final push to defeat Dagmar and all of that. But God, not to say that I didn't like it. The show is entertaining. It continues to be entertaining, and it definitely has its heartfelt moments, especially the series finale. I really like the way they handled it, but just kind of getting there along the way, David, I want you to weigh in here. It felt like this dragged a bit.
Yeah, it's not a very tightly written show, I'd say. Like, that's kind of the biggest part. Like, certainly, it's unfair to stack it up against Golden Age Simpsons, where it's like, you know, episode after episode is just, you know, classic. Whereas, you know, here it's a bit more, when are they going to get to the fireworks factory?
Well,
a Simpsons reference inside a Simpsons reference.
You also can't compare Futurama or The Simpsons to this. This is one ongoing story.
Yeah, it's more of a syndicated storyline, which is fine. You know, that's the way that things are done now, and no reason for them not to. But yeah, like I kind of found that. I mean, they lampshaded it in like the last episode, how like half the plot lines in the show were just never resolved.
Yeah,
or never really thoroughly explained.
Yeah. Honestly, Robert likes to make fun of me because if Robert doesn't bully me, he doesn't feel better about himself. But
it's one of my coping mechanisms.
Yeah, that's why
sometimes sometimes you have to make someone else feel bad about themselves to make yourself feel better about yourself. Listen, and I'm tired of making other people feel better about themselves.
Or if Robert having to tear me down, you know, for an hour once a week keeps him from killing himself, I'm glad to be the sacrificial lamb. Anyway,
if that's the only thing stopping me from that at some point, I will just go through with
it. Anyway,
it's not dark.
You just get used to it after a while with him. It's kind of like whiskey. You get used to the taste. Anyway, Robert Winfree, my favorite brand of whiskey. So I drink you. Anyway,
it's bitter and very dark.
Goddamn right. So I don't mean, it's one of the it's just a weird show because, like I said, I'm sitting here and I'm watching this, and I swear to God, there were parts I actually like nodded off. Also, a famous Markism. Mark stay awake through an entire show. Not if it's not The Wire. So
I imagine even by now, The Wire wouldn't. If you come back after a long, hard day of work and you're like, you know what, The Wire, and you pop in season 1 and then you get halfway through episode 1 and you nod off, that would not surprise me.
Yeah. So I'm watching this, and I think one of my major criticisms of the writing of this season was it was a lot of the same beat for a few episodes before they would move things on. Dagmar trying to find Bean's body being probably the best example of this. This went on for fucking ever. And then they're trying to hide the body, and then they trade the body for the head. And that's, you know, it's like this, it took forever for them to finally resolve the goddamn thing. And the show is held up by the chemistry between the characters and the quips and jokes.
Yeah.
It is not at this point being held together by a strong plot, Robert.
Nope. Which is kind of a shame because there's a lot of elements of like the world building and some of that stuff that I think is really good.
Mm-hmm.
But this season gets bogged down with trying to remember exactly how this went. This is the one that not Dagmar, sorry. Bean doesn't come back until a bit later. Mm-hmm. She's off. She's with the mermaid for a lot of this one, right? Or is that previous?
Yes. Yeah, no, she's with the mermaid for a lot of this.
Yeah, the mermaid this one. Yeah, okay. And it's not that she and the mermaid aren't, you know, a fun little pairing, but it's one of those things. Like, I get your point there that it just kind of drags a bit. Like, okay, we've gotten the beat, and then there's some fun hijinks with hiding Bean's body from Dagmar, but there's a misalignment of the energy in the chase looking for it and how long it goes on. if you want to do a Looney Tunes bit with them hiding the body,
that's one episode at best.
Yeah, you're right. It's one episode and it's fun and it's funny.
Right.
But if you want to do the kind of tense Dagmar tears the castle apart in the background while our characters do other stuff, you can't then do the Looney Tunes bit as well. There's a misalignment there. That's a bit of a problem. I do want to commend this show for not being afraid to go dark in places. That final battle that they have in the Cove Cave is not afraid to get bloody. That's for sure.
You're talking about where Dagmar finally gets impaled on the crystal?
Yeah, but that whole fight scene before that, like the mermaids show up and you have the army of the Trogs that are under Dagmar's control and they just slaughter each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I appreciated that. I think my other sort of gripe here with the writing, I didn't love bringing the mermaid back to life, and I didn't love Ursula coming back to life either. Because remember you had like the bear woman that you thought died.
Oh, right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That whole beat was so much better when it was just, okay, she's dead. Now, how does the king and his new son get along? Like, that was a better narrative arc than her showing back up.
I hear what you're saying. I don't want to argue with you on what has more narrative heft because I'm going to lose that fight. So this comes down to kind of personal preference. And David, I want you to weigh in on this. We can get into this discussion. Personal satisfaction. And this is going to be a shitty review structurally because we're going to be all over the place. There's going to be like no cohesiveness to this. Normally,
it's going to be like the show.
Yeah, we're going to be all over the fucking place. So we might as well just talk about the series finale now. One of the things that I think makes Bean who she is the fact that, much like Aragorn, she is running away from her royal duties. She does not want to be queen. She does not want to be married to a prince. You know, she sort of rejects the monarchy in that, you know, at her heart, she's sort of a punk rock rebel running up the down staircase kind of gal, you know, and then, you know, we actually talked about this in a previous season and I cut it for TikTok, so I remember it. You know, it's funny, you use the word brave. The show, what a strange place to find an exploration of one's own sexuality. If you'll indulge me for just a moment, I think the personal journey that people go through where they don't know if they're queer or not, and they're kind of exploring it, and they're really not too sure until they've had some experiences and they've been in love and they've gone through the heartbreak and, you know, and they've just had social experience where they go, this feels right, this doesn't feel right. If you think about all the places that, you know, popular fiction explores the theme of discovering your queerness, Disenchantment would not be the first thing I would guess, but it absolutely does that. And so not only does she go on this journey of, I am not meant to be a princess, I am meant to be this other thing. You know, I am sort of meant to restore the balance of the force and then go about my life. You know, this is not for me. And which is what she does. She puts the elves back in charge. She restores, you know, the balance to Dreamland. But also, again, one of the things I like about the mermaid is not only are they a nice pairing, not only is there weirdly in an animated show a lot of sexual chemistry between the two, and there's some like funny interactions that they have, especially when she's trying to drive the submarine. That was fucking hilarious. It was one of the funnier bits of the show for me.
That was there. One of my favorite gags is early on when Bean is like hanging outside of the castle window and the mermaid's with her, and she goes, "Yeah, the more you're around me, the more you get used to clinging for your life to ledges."
But, you know, the other thing about Bean, a defining characteristic is her, and we had talked about this back then, and it kind of comes full circle here. So I had described her as almost asexual, you know, where she just kind of rejects sexual intimacy out of hand. And maybe that's what you do until you find the kinds of people you want to be sexual with, which is exactly what happens. She falls in love with this mermaid, and she figures out, oh wait, I'm gay. I'm gay for mermaids. Hot dog, you know. And there's genuine love there. And so Bean makes a lot of personal sacrifices. Bean goes on this great hero's journey. Bean, gives to everybody in Dreamland, kind of like the wizard, everything that they wanted. Everyone has a happy ending. I can see the value narratively in robbing Bean of her happy ending, but it would have been personally dissatisfying to me, Dave. I would be sad if at the end of all things, Bean doesn't get her gal.
Yeah, the only thing I can remember is I think they sort of established that she doesn't really have many boyfriends because her father tends to execute them all.
True.
When your overprotective dad is the king and can kill someone with just a word, that kind of shortens your dating pool a lot. But yeah, for the most part, she's never really portrayed as an overly sexual person. Like she's never pining after boys or chasing boys or girls for that matter. It's just her and I know we keep saying the mermaid. I feel bad for not knowing the character name, but
Mora. I think.
Mora. Yeah, let's go with Mora.
Sure.
Yeah. When she meets Mora, she's not really, it just kind of naturally happens, which I liked. Like, they're not really pushing anything. It's just like, oh, hey, we like each other. We get along, and okay, things are moving along. Oh, well, that happened, and and so on and so forth. So, yeah, like I thought, I don't think it's going to go down in history as one of the best on-screen relationships of any kind, but it's also certainly not the worst, which I'll take.
I think more of what I was trying to get you to respond to is, Robert's contention that leaving Mora dead would have had more narrative heft. And I said, no, giving Bean her happy ending and, the woman she loves, the mermaid she loves, I think works better as a more satisfying ending for most of us mortals.
I think most of us tend to like happy endings.
I know I do.
Yeah, for the most. I said most of us. I didn't say everyone. Those of you that don't like happy endings, you're welcome to not like happy endings. That's fine.
Yes, you pay the massage therapist and you leave. Oh, wait, you're talking about real happy endings.
Quit making it weird.
Moving on.
Speaking of asexual, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Yeah. I think with Mora coming back to life, it's not really a Bean thing. It's a Luci thing.
Yeah.
Because this was, Luci the demon, who pretty much exists to cause chaos and suffering in the world. He ends up self-sacrificing himself for Bean, if I remember correctly, or Bean and the crew.
Yeah, I forget exactly how he dies again, but he does.
Yeah, but anyway, he does, and it's permanent this time. He can't go back, and he's stuck in heaven because he did a good thing to, as a self-sacrifice, which he hates. Being a demon.
Him breaking God was
hilarious. Yeah. And just the joy of like, I get to make everybody in heaven cry. This is like life goals achieved. But no, I get it's him because they end up he feels bad and he fixes God, and turns out it was all a test. And God said, because you passed the test, I will grant you one wish. And Luci decides bring Mora back and make Bean happy, which for a demon that is sort of, I guess you could say, the end of his arc, where he does something very uncharacteristic for a friend. Like it's a selfless act.
It's motivated by love. He loves Bean. Yeah. He says so in the damn show. But it's one of those things where, sometimes the best way you can love somebody is to, I don't know how else to say this. It's going to sound weird, but sometimes the best way you can love somebody is to set them free to find love themselves.
Yeah.
For what that's worth.
Yeah,
and there's Luci going, I love Bean and I want her to be happy, and this is what's going to make her happy, and it doesn't really matter what happens to me.
Yeah, it's him making a sacrifice himself for another person, and like Bean will probably never know, at least not until she dies, that Luci did that for her, which is the idea of doing something good when no one's looking, sort of.
Right. Yeah. Which is
that's a true, a true good act. So,
I have to tell you, Lucy's sort of explanation for why he had God bring Mora back to life, and then and then have that sort of breakdown moment where he cries and says, "Because I love Bean." Like I said, the show is ridiculous at times and really silly.
Yeah,
but but when it wants to do an impactful moment, like. And this is yet another example of when no one's paying attention to your project in Hollywood, some great art is made.
Yeah.
And a lot of crap can be made too. Let's just be clear. There's a reason why Passion Project is
Sure, but when my
Yeah. I know what you mean, Mark. Yeah, I just this isn't a hard set rule that if we just got all the executives out of the way and let the artists do whatever they wanted to
into
do,
the fucking sea. No,
yeah.
What I'm saying.
Remember Battlefield Earth?
Alrighty.
Yes, I do.
My point being is that no one really interferes on this show. They just sort of let them do their thing.
Yeah.
And some really magical moments got made. That's the only thing I'm saying. Yes, I understand this could also lead to crap. But in this particular instance, in this particular show, they were sort of given a blank check and a canvas and said, go make art. And Luci sort of admitting he loves Bean and bringing another being back to life to make her happy. Even little things like, is it Grog? Gog? What is the name of the king?
Zog.
Zog. I was close. I would have gotten there eventually if I went through the whole alphabet.
That's the joke. You would have.
Pretty much, yes.
Zog kind of, everything he has done, and I really identify with this character. I relate. He's like, I have made personal sacrifices. I have done things I'm not particularly proud of because I think it was in the best interest of this kingdom. I am not particularly appreciated for it. And at the end of the day, I was miserable. So fuck it. I'm going to go into the woods to live deliberately with my bear woman and her cub. And this crown that was once so important to him, this kingdom that was once so important to him, he's like, fuck it. And he just throws the crown and it lands on an antler, a deer passing by. And he's like, I don't even care. It's silent. The whole thing is dialogueless. He's just kind of sitting around the campfire. He's with Ursula. He's with the cub, and he just chucks the crown. He's like, none of this. It's all meaningless. And I kind of like that. I like that his journey comes to an end of sometimes it's not worth fighting this fight anymore. You got to let the world go in the direction it wants to go, and just find a little spot for yourself to be happy. Well, I relate, Zog. I relate.
It's even a little bit more profound than that. I mean, Zog is a character that, married Dagmar, loved her, found out after going through a lot of effort to bring her back from being stone that she's not at all the person he thought she was.
Yeah, I don't relate to that at all.
No, I can't imagine.
No
bitterness there.
You marry somebody and they turn out to be not who you thought they were 15 years later. It's a weird thing that Hollywood's digging into that sort of experience. Go on.
But in sort of that intervening time, he dedicates himself not only to trying to bring her back, but all the pointless things of the world. It's like, I must have power. I must have money. I must have all these things that don't really matter because it's a bad coping mechanism for the gaping hole at the center of his life. And at the end of the show, he finally realizes that, like, none of that matters. My power, my authority, I've been through some pretty terrible stuff, and none of that is rewarding. None of that is fulfilling. I know that Bean's okay now, and this, my new family, like, this is what matters. Not the crown, not the kingdom, none of it. He finds what's actually important in life, and you know what? God bless him.
Yeah, it kind of did like that old like David Simon, extended ending where you kind of spend a few minutes with each character as we start to progress out of the show. This season 5 of The Wire, that's how they handled it. It was literally like they just went through the remaining cast of characters, spent 4 or 5 minutes with each one, and then we were into our montage and we were out. And I like that. That's how they handled this. So you got to see each character a little ways down the line and how they were doing, and what the next phase of their life started to look like. And I liked that his was one of the ones that really touched me. It really got to me. Him just sort of sitting on the log going, this is it. This is all my life needs to be. It was nice. It was use the word profound, and I would agree. It was a profound moment. Bean running away from the kingdom, giving it to the elves, and going off with Mora to have fantastic and magical lives. It was great. I wouldn't take that away from that character, to kind of go back to 10 minutes ago. I like the fact that she had her happy ending, which brings me to Elfo and Mop Girl.
That came out of left field, didn't it?
Who had Elfo and Mop Girl on their bingo card of relationships in this show?
I don't know where that ship came from, but it sailed.
I forget what is. I know they put the elves back in charge. Oh, and then that's right. That's how Mop Girl becomes queen. Is they put the
She's
elves back.
actually an elf.
Yeah, she's
Yeah,
half, no, for half elf.
Well, they put the elves back in charge, and then the king elf steps down and goes and then appoints her as the new queen. That's what happens. It took me a minute to remember how that all resolved itself. But yeah,
But
her and Elfo.
Whatever will King-O do now that he's not king?
So play for the one Shaco. Oh, well, you ruined everything, Shaco. But yeah, what did you think of? I'll go to you first, Dave. What did you think of Elfo and Mop Girl, or whatever they did with Elfo and Mop Girl throughout the show?
Yeah, like you said, it kind of came out of left field. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. It was just like, okay, like the two of them together. It's not like they hated each other and then all of a sudden they're sleeping together.
Yeah,
but it also wasn't like they really sort of built a relationship over time. It was just, they'd have conversations from time to time, but that was about it. But it's kind of, it's nice that apparently they seem to like each other. The relationship works. It's sort of, Elfo has his happy ending where, he's with Mop Girl and the elves, and that's all good. And Mop Girl becomes a queen, and as near as we can tell, she's probably the most competent person around to be queen.
she's up there in the hierarchy. She's near the top.
Which was kind of like sorry, just to
go
finish
ahead.
my thought here. That's kind of like another issue that I would go with the whole Zog and Bean abdicating. Is I'm just kind of realizing, we're both kind of really damaged, screwed up people here. You probably don't want us actually wielding any sort of effective power,
Right?
like just it's like the best place for us is to just go into the woods or on an island and live deliberately with our loved ones and just leave the ruling to someone who is actually going to be good at it.
Throughout the course of the show, Elfo professed his love for Bean several times, and Bean always like friend zoned him. I don't feel like they resolved that adequately in any way, shape, or form. This is one of those parts of the writing that kind of fell flat for me. It was, I feel like this should, I don't feel like Bean and Elfo really got any kind of resolution to their relationship. At least with Luci, he was dead. He made this noble sacrifice and he became God's like little pet. And he was a better person for having gone through this experience by the end of it. And that's it. You don't really need anything more than that. For Elfo and Bean, with everything that they've been through, I don't feel like there was an adequate resolution with those two.
I mean, not every character needs an arc. Arcs are great, don't get me wrong, but you don't.
But that relationship didn't have a resolution, is my point.
Yeah, well, it never really had a start either. It was just Elfo likes Bean. Bean's not interested. The end.
All right, Robert, what's your take on this?
I don't fully disagree with you, Mark. I think Elfo's like sort of lust.
Keep going, and then we'll address it.
Okay. Elfo's like sort of desire for being physically, it never really went away, but his like love in that particular respect, it died when he watched her, when he was shown what she did in hell, and this is a couple of seasons back, right?
Like season 2.
Yeah. Because at the end, Bean has the choice to either save her mother or save Elfo, and she saves her mother, and that's kind of the moment when the genuine like romantic pseudo connection died, and they kind of rebuilt again. They rebuilt some of their friendship, but I don't think you're wholly wrong that it felt like the writers felt like they'd said everything they needed to say about it, and most of the audience felt differently, and that disconnect kind of became an issue.
So your brother, one of the most frustrating things that was at the end of Elfo and Bean never got to say goodbye. Elfo just standing on the beach as she and the mermaid swam off bothered me. Yeah, it bothered me too, and I think that's my point. To kind of go with what Robert said, I didn't even remember that their relationship had hit the skids because of what she did in hell. And I think that's the thing is, if they're saying, if the show's narrative resolution for Bean and Elfo is they found other people to be in love with and they just went their separate ways, okay, I guess I can accept that. But something that needs to be said between the two. Elfo kind of needs to have told. Hang on, Elfo kind of needs to have told Bean, "I was enamored with you, I lusted after you, and maybe that lust was love. Maybe it was still just enamoration. But at the end of the day, I maybe I'm the only one that sees through you, and you've done a lot of great things, and no one's taking away your hero's moment, but you're not the person I thought you were, and I'm glad to have moved on past you. I think he needed to have said something like that.
We need one of the, and there's any number of instances from this show that you could take, but we needed like one of those moments that like BoJack Horseman has with Connie. I don't need him with I don't need him and Aaron Paul's like him and Aaron Paul's character had their own thing, but BoJack has a kind of quasi flirtation with that the writer who's kind of who's one of his friends throughout the and again it's quasi romantic. There's different times when each of them seems differently interested. It never consummates and their relationship changes, but they address it. And that's a little bit missing from that particular relationship. But if I might be a little bit sardonic, I know me.
Please.
Change the pace here.
My dark whiskey, please.
Of course, she never said goodbye to him. She's the liberal power fantasy of, oh no, the natives were better without us. Let me go do whatever I want to do.
I mean, to be fair, she didn't say goodbye to anyone.
Yeah, and that's really where my again, my quasi sarcastic take on that comes from. If she just stiffed Elfo and they'd ended on bad terms, again, I could live with that, but she skips out on the wedding reception and she and Elfo never get to say goodbye. And yeah, it's kind of a crappy thing to do. Because for as much as Bean went through an arc, there's still a little bit of that in her that, if I stick around, maybe and it's not wholly selfish. I don't mean to come across that way, but there's a little bit of, I don't need to say anything more to any of these people, even if maybe they have something more to say to me, and then we're out.
Right. And I don't feel like there's a missing reel of footage here where we get to empathize with Elfo. Elfo just kind of shrugs and goes, well, Bean gonna Bean. And then he goes off to live with Mop Girl. And it's like, don't you ever just want to see Elfo get pissed? Like, don't you?
Well, I think he has gotten pissed. It's just, pissed is a relative term when it comes to Elfo. Remember Elfo being a badass, right?
Yeah.
Scoffs, and then they go to the Elfage. He's like, I take it back, Elfo. You are a badass.
Well, you called Bean sort of the liberal power fantasy. Isn't Elfo in a lot of ways the avatar for how a lot of men think and feel? And I think as a cathartic experience, some of us men needed Elfo to fucking tell Bean, or to say out loud what it's like to deal with somebody that self-centered, where it's like, yeah, Bean's a good person in a lot of ways, but Bean's also a very damaged person in a lot of ways. It's a very artful bit of writing that they don't make Bean fully formed by the end. Yes, she went on this arc. Yes, she's a better person by the end of it, but she's still in a lot of ways she's kind of shitty. And I think Elfo needed to be the voice for that. And they robbed him of that. They robbed the audience of that cathartic moment. And I guess there's an argument to be made for some of us really don't get to have closure in our relationships. Sometimes just shit happens and you're dealing with somebody who won't listen or just ran away. And you're going, I have to live with this. I got to sleep with this. I got to roll around in it. And I got to continue to live my life. And maybe that's what they were trying to say with Elfo. But I don't need to be reminded how, shitty relationships can be at the end and how you sometimes don't get closure, even if that's what the writers were intending. I'm like, oh, not personally satisfying for me.
If you want to make that point, that Elfo and Bean is not the pairing that I would have used to make that point personally.
Okay, go ahead.
I might have done it more with who was it? It was Bean.
Okay, we got Bean and
I might have done it with Bean and Zog, in all honesty. I might have not
really
had their they had come so far previously that them ending on the more bittersweet note might have felt better than Elfo and Bean ending bittersweet.
I don't agree at all, but you're allowed to think how you think. What else about this? I will tell you as I think about the series and things that I like, things that I don't like.
The weirdo who wanted to go to the moon, I thought was.
Yeah, Richard Iowati, whatever his character's name was.
The ruler of Steamtown.
Yeah, that was one of those arcs that didn't really seem to go anywhere. Like,
yeah,
we always had to say, like, Steamtown, they're up to something. They have some sort of, nefarious plot to do something, and in the end, he just takes all the goo from the Trogs, which again didn't seem to do anything other than turn elves into Trogs. And apparently, it can also be used as rocket fuel. And he goes to the moon, and they're on the moon. That's it. Like,
could care less about this entire plot.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, did they just kind of give up or have to cut stuff, or they never really figured it out?
That's one of those that I think they had like half-formed ideas and thought they might have another little bit of time to discover something for that in the writing process that never quite came to fruition, and so it becomes a kind of giant nothing burger.
Yeah, I mean, good for the Trogs. They got to the moon, which they really seem to be obsessed with. So, good for them. But that's about it. Like, we never really got a good payoff for like the Trogs and the goo and like what their significance is in the story. They're just kind of like, okay, there are these little elf adjacent creatures underneath Dreamland. I mean, maybe it ties into the overall, like lore of Dreamland originally being an elf kingdom, and the humans conquered it and pushed the elves out. And it's the intersection of, heaven and hell, which is where magic is produced due to the forces of each. But like, that's not really important to the story at all. It's just explaining why Dagmar and Bean shoot lightning at each other for like the last 10 episodes.
I was about to address that, but you guys went into the whole go to the moon. All right, so we'll just get into it.
Yeah.
So I'm reminded of this first season of Doom Patrol, easily the best season of Doom Patrol. And at the conclusion, when they're fighting I think it's Mr. Nobody, or whatever the fuck the character's name was.
The irony that his name is Mr. Nobody, and you're like, I don't care who he is fantastic.
Now we get to the punchy part. And that line always cracked me up because it was this tacit admission that, these superhero shows, these fantasy shows, these action shows have to end with a giant fight of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
And they were parroting it. They were making fun of it. They were satirizing it. They were basically saying, can we not do anything different with this medium? Can we not do anything different with this genre? Does it always have to end in a fist fight? Which has been my complaint, that everything leading up to the fist fight imminently more interesting than the fist fight itself at the very end.
Well, then everyone complains that you didn't actually put the space squid out there and you came up with a better idea.
So my point being that it feels like the writers didn't quite know. It's like the ending that we've already talked about. We've already discussed like the elves taking over the kingdom, Bean, Zog, etc. It feel like they had that pretty much in concrete. Like they knew how they wanted that part of the show to end. The resolution of everything with Dagmar and Bean, I don't feel like anyone had any good ideas. So they were just like, what if it's Star Wars? What if it's just them shooting lightning at each other, and eventually she gets, buried in a cave-in of some, and impaled? It's like, I was honestly, I very much had this experience of like, can we please get on with this? Get on with this. Oh my God, get on with this already. It was driving me nuts, and it was like the least fun for me. And I know somebody hearing this like, no, it's fun to watch two broads shoot lightning at each other. I mean, if that's what you like, the show can be for everybody and you can like different parts of it. But for me, it was the least interesting, most boring stuff in the show.
There was some good potential for what Dagmar's trying to do, and it's unfortunate that they never quite.
They seem very, very okay with using the Dagmar stuff as to make jokes about shrilly women and their sort of abused husbands. Like that was the constant beat with her and Satan.
Yeah, I mean, like, why did Bean have to marry Satan? Why was that part of the plan? What did he bring to the operation?
Go ahead.
I mean, don't get me wrong; it was hilarious to watch. Geez, Mark cuts out just as I talk about his best.
No, he's got
his favorite topic.
Good. Keep going.
Yeah, no, it's just his favorite topic because like it was hilarious to see Satan as a battered husband.
Yeah, that was an interesting choice. it plays into the resolution nicely where
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh, so you want to be alone, right? And you want to not be married. And yes, okay, fine. Go into this gibbet that hangs off the ends of the Dreamland castle, and you can just be there forever.
Yeah, with Freckles, the most annoying character, but like it's a great punishment.
No.
My only complaint about that ending scene when she gets stuck with Freckles is it meant that we had to endure Freckles up till that point as the audience.
I'm gonna kill all of you.
Yeah, exactly.
I could have done without Freckles.
Yeah,
I don't know. Freckles always cracked me up.
Yeah,
Here's the problem with Freckles. He's a good gag that way overstays his welcome.
yeah.
I would almost guarantee you Freckles wasn't meant to be in it this long, but somebody fell in love with that character on the writing staff, and they could. It's like, I don't know if you know about if you've ever had a friend who likes to beat the same joke to death over and over and over again, and they
You're Mark.
doing.
We've met.
Yes,
Yeah, this is a very meta show tonight.
But it's very much like they fell in love with that character, and they kept. And every time they did a Freckles thing in the script, everybody in the writers' room would laugh, and everybody, when they would do table reads, everyone would laugh at the Freckles stuff, and then it just became like, well, let's just keep doing Freckles then. I would almost guarantee you that's how he ended up going as far as he did.
Right.
You're probably right.
Could be right, but yeah, it didn't work for me. But yeah, the Satan Dagmar thing was funny, but again, I just didn't really see like what was the point of it to the plan overall. Like the plan was very undefined, and even the stakes, like what's the end game here? Like, is this to conquer the world? Or
much as I don't like exposition dumps, this kind of needed one.
Yeah, they needed to give you more of that sooner. Yeah, it was shoved all into the end of the show, and they didn't even give much of an explanation for that. But I do have to say, Luci torturing Satan was just brilliant.
That was good.
And then Satan's just attitude of shame afterwards. Like I think Luci actually tortured me.
Yeah, those interactions were they're such good scenes. I wish everything around them had been better. Because
I mean, it's a great cast, and they have good chemistry with each other, and like all that works. It just like the writing's not terrible, but geez, I wish it was a bit more.
The dialogue
felt like they had more of a plan.
The dialogue writing is sharp. I think the writing of interpersonal relationships is spot on. The fantasy story, the actual plot of this fucking thing, is convoluted, meandering, kind of up its own ass at times. And then, again, I like the fact that it almost sometimes feels like they did it on purpose, because to have a character call that kind of thing out, it's almost like they wrote it and it got a little too cute by half, and they were just like, well, let's just call ourselves out on this because we know we've lost the plot somewhere. We focused on all this other stuff, but we actually don't have a good, strong plot here. Well, we can get away with it if we just make a joke out of that.
I almost wonder if Netflix just showed up to Matt Groening's house and said, like, here's X amount of money, make us something.
Here's your blank check. Simpsons fella.
Because I could see get the Simpsons team working on like something that pokes fun at fantasy, the fantasy genre. You could do some good stuff there, but there wasn't really much poking fun at fantasy. It was just the setting.
You know what else?
No, I don't agree with that. There was a lot of
hang on. You know what hurt
parodying the fantasy genre. Go ahead, Robert.
You know what really hurt that? The last season of Game of Thrones.
Go on.
I'm not here to pile on, but when this show starts, we're near the end of Game of Thrones, but we're not done with it. So that's between that and I think you had the first season of The Witcher, and you had this kind of like pseudo renaissance of fantasy and popular culture. So a show that kind of pokes at it makes sense,
so that the audience can follow on what we're talking about. The difference between general fantasy and the kind of, we're calling it high fantasy, but the kind of fantasy that involves like I don't want to say
the Rings is like the highest high fantasy, like
knights, dragons, magic, wizards,
elves,
yes,
all that stuff.
High fantasy. Go on.
Yeah, and the fact that the last season of Game of Thrones was basically self-parody unintentionally, it took all the air out of that balloon.
Yeah.
And that again, I'm not saying that's the only reason some of this stuff didn't quite land as much later on, but when the genre you're poking fun at implodes before you're done poking fun at it, like there's a finite amount of stuff you can do with that.
Right. Like, what if, like, space fantasy, like Star Wars had, like, sort of blown, like Star Wars does well, but then The Empire Strikes Back comes out and, Return of the Jedi come out, and both of those are miserable failures. How then can Mel Brooks do Spaceballs?
Yeah.
You can't.
I mean, you couldn't do it now because the last couple of Star Wars projects just imploded on themselves.
Right. Yes, there'll be no more Spaceballs 2, The Search for More Money. Fucking thing.
I really do wish he would do that, though. There's so much.
I thought I heard him saying he was going to, but like when
I remember I posted
out,
something in the chat about it, and I just died a little inside.
Well, again, like when you turn into self-parody, actual parody is nothing.
Right.
So, what can you do with it? So I think that hurt, again, kind of the fact that this is kind of poking at the fantasy genre to begin with. We all kind of got soured on that by things not related to this show.
Right.
But I think the other reason they kind of turned the devil into a sort of battered, henpecked husband was so at the end he can get his revenge on Dagmar, and it also sets up him taking Bean and Mora and everyone off the list of the damned. So despite being kind of terrible people, they're not going to wind up in hell.
I like the message of that, though, that even the embodiment of evil can have a moment of human decency. Unintentional or intentional, I can't read the writer's minds. All I can do is what I do with every podcast and everything that we review. I can interpret from what I saw, and I like what I think was the message of that is nobody, even Satan, is all bad, and God is not all good, and that everybody is possessive of shades of gray, and that we are all capable of human decency, which I think was a nice message. Weird that it comes from this show. Like there's so much content out there, and so much of it is bereft of any meaningful message. And then you get a show like this, which is as silly as the day is long. And I've spent the last 45 minutes gushing about its viewpoint on human relationships. So, art is where you find it. You know what I mean? Anything else, Robert, because I'm kind of out of gas now. Anything else about this show that you want to talk about?
I think the last thing maybe worth kind of poking a little bit is like the destruction of God. When Luci breaks the light bulb that is the head of God, and then he and Jerry are trying to figure out what do we do. What's the line from Luci there? Like, man, we're on like 4 different levels of theological weirdness here. We don't know what's going on. Because they get into the throne and like, oh, there's replacement light bulbs back into his head. Like, and again, the actual joke that he drops at one point is, man, we are theologically just all over the place here. And it kind of made me laugh, but
I mean, we've been killing God for the past 100 years, so it's not surprising they would make a joke out of that.
Yeah, and once again, we come to the inevitable conclusion that the death of God is a really, really bad thing.
Your brother in with it. It's a crying shame we never got a give him the goo joke again.
We could have used another one of those, yeah.
You can never get enough goo, that's what I say.
You can, but it takes a while.
Yeah, I thought the killing of God and all of that was...
Then everything starts collapsing. Like the light goes out of the universe. And
I mean, there is an ironclad perspective in this show, isn't there? Like there is no ifs, ands, or buts about how the people in this show, which is weird because it's coming from godless Hollywood. But they absolutely, I mean, you said it. Their standpoint of view was when you remove God from the world, things tend to implode, and that's a brave standpoint in the year of our Lord 2024.
If you don't mind me getting a little bit philosophical about this,
I would never mind you getting philosophical. In 50 words or less.
Why would anyone get philosophical about killing God?
Who would have thought, right?
Yeah.
If you kill God, the problem really that first of all, you can't actually. My religious belief, like that God exists, deal with it. Beyond our ability.
I have that on a T-shirt. Mindy made it for me.
Beyond our ability to interfere with, but if you take God out of the world, right? If you take God
Mhm.
out of your life, the reality is something is going to take that place. Something becomes what is of most importance to you.
Right. Typically vice, instant gratification, etc.
And congratulations, everybody. You want to look at how badly that goes? Take a look at the year 1901 through 2001. Just have a look at that.
Right.
And this is what, so you're exactly right. Like the number of people who, especially the creative types in modern Hollywood who do no, there is no God and we can do whatever we want and somehow this will create the utopia. Does it not?
Well, it's the, no, and I don't want to get off too much on a tangent here, and I also want to get Dave and get his final thoughts. The religious devotion to why can't I just do whatever I want is what's killing this culture and destroying a lot of our institutions. But you can't convince people of that. It's really, really hard because doing what you want feels really, really good until it feels really, really awful. It's
at
like
which point you start trying to. At which point then you do something else that's really, really bad but feels really good. And I know someone who was a pretty heavy drinker. For a long time, and he's not like teetotaler sober, but he's not an alcoholic basically anymore. Like he's not that boozing at that level. And he said, I did, not shy about why he did. A bunch of messed up stuff happened to him, and but asked about what's up with that later. He's like, well, all I was doing was resetting the shot clock.
All right,
but the game clock's still running, and okay, I'm drunk. And I'm numb and I'm not feeling all the bad stuff. Woohoo. And when I wake up in the morning, literally everything that made me feel bad is still there because I haven't done shit about it.
You and I have had the conversation about moral relativism and the collapse of institutional relationships and culture. I feel like a dozen times just in the last 2 years. Just the last 2 years.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because, here we are.
And we both keep coming to the same conclusion that we can talk about it, we can philosophize about it all we want, we can warn people, but we are shouting into the void. And I tell you, without getting into my own personal stuff, but my own personal experience over the last 2 years has convinced me there is no talking to people about this.
There's a couple of things at play there. One of them I've always known. The other was reframed for me recently. The reframing was understand that when you're arguing about some of this with people, you're not arguing with them, you're arguing with the TV.
Yep.
And the TV can't hear you and doesn't care.
Right. It's hard to convince people to do. Dave, I swear to God, I'm pitching right to you, so get ready.
Yeah. It's hard to hate TV. It spent so much time raising us.
What I was going to say to conclude this and then move on is it is very hard to convince people. Something I talk about with my kids all the time. Something that my dad raised me with. He's not the most perfect father, and there's a lot of stuff that he's done that I'm not particularly happy or proud of. But the one thing that he taught me that I've imparted to my kids that I can't get anyone else to understand is doing the right thing because it's the right thing, whether or not you will benefit from it is immaterial. You do it because it's what must be done. And sometimes you're gonna get hurt by it. But convincing people to do things that are not in their best interest because it's for the greater good.
The greater good.
Thank you.
Anytime.
Is almost fucking impossible to get people to understand. There's an anathema, just almost an allergic reaction to doing anything that is not seen as in their immediate benefit. And, for as much pain as we go through, going through the course of living our daily lives, people are just unwilling to take on even a little bit of pain for
the greater good.
Thank you. So it kind of makes this conversation, it's nice to have, but it almost comes across as whining because we are so massively, laughably outnumbered when it comes to people willing to do the hard work of doing what's in the best interest of culture and society. That being said, David, what was anyone last things that you want to talk about before we get out of here tonight? And I'm going to put this comment on here while you're composing your thoughts.
Okay. Well, continuing this discussion is, I think one of the things that we're getting at is,
you want to continue this discussion? I'm shocked. Like, barely fucking bail out of this while I can. Go ahead, sorry.
Okay. But it's instant gratification versus delayed gratification too. What feels good in the present, and damn the consequences. It's like, I wish that I was in better shape. It's like, well, stop eating hamburgers. but hamburgers taste so good, and that makes me feel good now.
Right.
It's like, well, then don't complain about being overweight.
Exercise hurts. Well, it's going to. You're literally breaking down your body so it can be remade better. Yes, but I don't want to do that. It hurts and I'm tired and I don't want to do it. Okay, well then be fat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, but yeah, I think there is a movement growing that's sort of starting to acknowledge that is, we're doing all this hedonistic stuff, let's say, like just living for the pleasure, and so many of us are miserable.
Dude,
I hate to
not to preach too much.
I feel like we're about to say the same thing, but you go ahead and do it.
But there's a line from it's in the Book of Mormon. So if you want to throw stones at me, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Care. The prophet Alma is preaching at one point. I think this is Alma the older, but it might be younger. But the verse I believe concludes with him telling his son, so it would be the younger, just warning him, wickedness never was happiness. It might feel good, but you're never going to get happy at doing it. You'll never find fulfillment and joy and long-term gratification.
Here's the thing: we're not geniuses. We're not the first people to come up with this, because where I've heard this story before? The fucking Bible. You know which part? The Old Testament. You know which story? Sodom and Gomorrah. Literally, fucking Vegas and New Orleans, and it was smote by God because. The lesson being, you can't just go through life doing whatever it is the fuck you want to do. Damn the consequences. This is, I was talking to somebody recently. I was actually said this to my girlfriend. I said, I don't want to live in a world where I'm not building anything anymore. I don't want to run on a treadmill. I don't want to run in circles and just do perpetual laps. I want to be moving forward. I want to accomplish things. I want to build stuff. And I was talking in terms of relationships. I don't want to have a cadre of meaningless relationships rotating around me that go nowhere and do nothing just to distract and entertain me. That feels like a wasted life. For those that feel differently, you're entitled to feel how you feel. That's how I feel. Me, I want to be moving towards goals, and I want to be moving towards goals with a partner. And I've had to make some massive changes in my life because I realized the latter was making me unhappy, and the former is when I was the happiest. Getting other people on board with that idea, uphill fucking struggle.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah. So that was the deep section of tonight's discussion.
Disenchantment.
Yes.
There's your TikTok cutout, Mark. You put that segment up and then do guess what TV show we were talking about when this came up.
You'll have to get rid of the background image, but yeah.
I already know I'm pulling this for TikTok, and it's going to be on the subject of killing God.
Yeah. Well, that'll get some eyeballs.
Yeah.
Yeah. But for the show, I'm glad I watched it. Is it the greatest thing ever? No, I think, stand it next to the Simpsons and Futurama, and it's probably not going to quite stand up, but as tall as those two. But like I say, there's some great character stuff in here. There's some great performances. They've got great banter between the characters. It's nothing heavy for the most part, but just the overall structure, plot lines, lore, it's kind of a bit of a mess and a bit half-baked, but there's in some ways it actually is the perfect analog for Game of Thrones.
I'm wondering how many times in the writers' room they felt like they had to dumb this down, because if we're picking up on some pretty hefty ideas and going, I wish these were explored a little bit more, I'm wondering if there was a thought to explore them more, and they thought, who the fuck do you think is watching this show?
I'd be kind of going against that, because especially in the case of the Simpsons, the Simpsons deals with some pretty heavy stuff in a pretty interesting, pretty serious way. I mean, If
Simpsons
you're not
has been
familiar
on-
with the show,
hang on.
it's just like the show
The
about social
Simpsons
shit
has
that keeps running around dropping his pants. But there's actually some decent. There's
Simpsons
some
has-
decent stuff in there.
The Simpsons has been on since the 1600s, though, Dave.
Yeah.
I mean, The Simpsons had a long time to work on a lot of things.
We found an old like cave painting of the Simpsons on the couch,
And you can
right up there with the buffalo hunts.
And you can trace the collective emotional maturity and intelligence arc downwards over the last, how many years have The Simpsons been on? 30 years? 40 years?
The Simpsons are basically as old as I am, so almost 40.
Yeah.
God, you're not even 40 yet?
Got a crack about my hairline or something?
No, my ex-wife just turned 40 in September. I thought you guys were the same age.
We're very, she and I are very close in age, but I'm not quite 40 yet.
You know, you've been hanging out with an old man this whole time.
Mark, I know you're about 10 years older than me. I always get along with people older than me. I have an old soul. What do you want me to say? I hate kids. You gotta work with me.
Anyway, but yeah, you can absolutely trace the emotional maturity and collective intelligence of at least American society as it fucking went downhill. I think, to back up my point, I don't think you can make the show any more intelligent than it already is, because I don't think there's an audience for it. There might have been 40 years ago when The Simpsons was out there and the audience was different and a lot more emotionally mature and intelligent. Also, I mean, it's a Netflix show, and sometimes Netflix produces stuff with heft and depth, and sometimes it produces trash. It's a really long tail of varying content, and I'm wondering how much of that influences the writing of this show.
Well, speaking of trash on Netflix, Monday Night Raw coming to Netflix near you.
Well done. I'll give my final thoughts.
No apologies.
And then we'll close out with Robert's thoughts. I, for the most part, enjoyed the show. I wasn't unexcited to talk about it with you guys. Now I'm very much am. I had no idea. Like, I went into this going, this will be 30 minutes and we'll be done. We're at an hour now, and we just talked about fucking moral relativism and killing God. You never know with these shows. You never know with my podcast. You never know with the stuff we're talking about. But I've never not enjoyed a season of Disenchantment. It was always mildly amusing. I will tell you this, never mind sort of the intellectual motifs of the show and some of the themes that they get into. This is one of the most quotable shows I've watched in a while. We were just doing Give Him the Goo not that long ago. But how many times since then have Robert and I, just going back and forth, and I go, the very same. The very thing. I stole so much from this fucking show.
My favorite one-liner from this show is still, I never should have let you glue stars on your dunce cap, when he's talking to Sorcerio, the wizard.
Yeah, I mean, look, even if you're not with some of the religious and moral and ethical and intellectual implications of the show, it's damn funny at times. Sometimes it's funnier than anything going on in the show. Just the shit that they say to each other. The little things like eye rolling when certain things happen. A lot of Luci stuff always cracked me up.
Lucy's the funniest character in the show.
By far.
Yeah. Best overall definitely goes to Luci.
Electronic aardvark here. 3 things will always be around until the death of network TV: The Simpsons, Family Guy, and SpongeBob. You ain't wrong about that.
Yeah, no, I can't disagree with that.
Once they find a hit, they hold until it's sucked drier than the Shara. Okay, I think he means
Sahara. And
he means Sahara.
Yeah.
Also, as a minor aside, if you want the driest desert in the world, it's not the Sahara.
But I get this. Yeah, we get the point.
Wow.
Hey, this is one of those weird. This is one of those stupidly useless trivia facts that I know that I don't. I rarely get to mention, but it's not the Sahara.
Yeah,
that's the sandiest desert in the world. It's not the driest. That's the Atacama.
Yeah, I was just thinking if you were still shilling for spell check, that would have been the perfect segue.
Oh, you mean
Grammarly?
Grammarly. And if you misspell comments while you're watching a podcast, Grammarly.
Mark, stop! They're not paying us.
Can I tell you how somebody used to fucking tear me a new one because your ad reads are terrible? Yes, because I was doing them at gunpoint. I hated doing ad reads. Robert,
Hang on. Who told you your ad reads were terrible?
ex-girlfriend. She
hence ex-girlfriend.
No, stop. None of the
Sorry.
phrases. Yeah, she would listen to some of our old shows. She was just like, "Hey, I have some feedback for you. This was great. You guys are really smart. Robert's really funny. Da, 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 da. What's with your fucking ad reads, man? I couldn't understand a word you said because you were speed reading through it. You're right. I didn't want to do it. I hated fucking doing the ad reads.
Yeah,
Okay,
I don't hold anyone on YouTube responsible for their advertising content. You pay your bills, people.
Everyone out there, Mark's perspective on this has changed now. If you do, in fact, want to sponsor TV Party Tonight or Damn You Hollywood or anything else here at the W2M network, we are more than happy to consider your product and to tell our dozens of listeners that they should consider it.
Have you listened to the audio versions of these podcasts? Sean has so many ad rolls going through them, and it cuts off mid-sentence. It's just like every few minutes it just goes off. And it completely breaks up the momentum of the show. So no, I'm not doing any ad reads.
Mark, hang on. First of all, in the mid-roll advertisements that are inserted on YouTube and stuff like that is done automatically.
I know, but it still drives me nuts.
Oh, I completely empathize. I'm saying that's not Sean's fault necessarily.
No, no. I'm not blaming him. I'm saying that's the setting he chose.
Yeah, and I understand that.
Your thoughts on the show, Robert, and then we can get out of here.
I'm kind of happy it exists. I might, now that it's all out there, and not immediately, but in the next little bit, I might rewatch the whole thing start to finish, being able to, when you can binge the entirety of something like that, it tends to open up slightly different ways you look at it.
Yeah, like you don't have to remember what happened last year on the show.
Yes, which is very helpful.
Yeah. I would definitely say it might be worth binging this instead of waiting real time.
So I might do that, but I'm glad it exists. It's funny, it's quotable, there's some heartfelt moments. It's lacking in structure, and which wouldn't be an issue if they weren't trying to sell you on part of the structure. Like The Simpsons has no structure, it's purely episodic, but because we know it's purely episodic, we don't expect overarching structure. When you say there's going to be overarching structure, we have to look for it, and it's not to be found here. Or in places it's really, it just struggles. But it's fun. It's funny. Happy to have seen it. Happier to have talked about it. So, a tip of the cap to everyone who worked on this one. Bless you. You did pretty good work when it's all said and done.
We review a lot of trash on the Radulich Broadcasting Network. It's nice when a show like this is surprisingly good and produces the kind of conversation we had tonight. I'm particularly proud of the three of us, but believe it or not, I think we put together an interesting conversation for the last hour. So bravo to Disenchantment and bravo to you guys. That being said, I'm taking my son to go see Dune tomorrow. And then on Thursday, I'm doing a double shot. I'm going to head over to the Movies That Don't Suck and Some That Do Fellas. And I'm going to talk American Fiction, which got nominated for Best Picture as of today. And then myself, and I'm going in the complete opposite direction, total content whiplash. Sean and I are doing a triple feature of Street Fighter 2, The Legend of Chun-Li, and Mortal Kombat Annihilation.
That is a giant bit of whiplash.
You said it, Buster.
Quick, change the channel.
Speaking of which...
He hasn't seen it yet. He doesn't get the joke.
I know, but he will.
Speaking of which, speaking of content whiplash, the Best Picture nominations were named today, and we're going to look at three of them. We're going to look at Past Lives, Maestro, and The Holdovers on a triple feature. That'll be me and Robert, and that's taking the place of Damn You Hollywood for next week. Because I am a benevolent dictator, when people approach me and they say, but sir, I would like to talk about this with you. I want to get your opinion. I need to weigh this against, I need to talk to you. I say, sure, I'm a whore for content. So that being said, Dorian Price brought in another. It's so funny. I have Sean Comer. Sean Comer had an ex. That ex is Alexis Hana. That ex has a friend named Zachary Strobel. She also has a friend named Dorian Price. And it's just like, it's like a zombie thing. Everybody begets another person, and they all get sucked into my little cult here. So
they all look. You'd be amazed who you bring in.
Drink the goo.
Goo.
Boy, I would like to give some people to
Goo. But no, you'd be amazed who you bring within the Event Horizon of the Black Hole when you come on this show.
No, one of us, Little Red Cookbook. Anyway, so Dorian Price and another friend who had been watching our shows and likes what we do here, believe it or not, they are coming on to do an on trial, and I will be judging this on trial for the Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern.
Oof.
All you have to do is hang on. All you have to do is judge.
Yes.
Guilty.
The fix is in.
I once saw this conversation on Twitter, now X. It's like, I'm wondering if I should watch the new Green Lantern movie, and then don't from at the real Ryan Reynolds.
Ryan Reynolds himself does not endorse that movie.
All right, and then we are kicking off Black History Month with the following. This is myself and Jason Teasley. We have an entire
Jason.
me
I
and Jason.
Wait for this lineup because you and Jason always have the best stuff for February.
We are kicking off Black History Month as we do. Jason and I being allies of the African American community. We we celebrate Black cinema with the following features: The Blackening, Black Christmas 2019, and Meet the Blacks. Because I'm subtle. And then Evan Bevins.
Relative to a few years ago, you are.
Evan Bevins, good to his mother. He will be coming on triple feature. I have to watch like a million movies next week. We are doing an actor focus, and that actor happens to be Jennifer Garner. So we are going to look at her Netflix movie from last year, Family Switch, and then Elektra and Peppermint. And
that's all terrible.
That's all Evan Bevins, baby. All right. That's what I'm doing. That's what Robert's doing. David, when are you back?
I think we're doing Lower Decks season 4 pretty soon.
Yeah, I think in March. I think you have February off unless you're doing something with Alexis.
I think I'm doing Hell of a Boss. Not Hell of a Boss. Sorry, Has Been Hotel. Speaking of killing God and
yeah, can I ask? I have a question. You do know that she booked that for Valentine's Day, right? Don't you have a wife?
Yes, and a daughter. So
why are you spending Valentine's Day with Alexis?
We'll see how it goes. There might be a change of plans.
I was gonna say, like, you better check that date, pal. Or you have a very understanding wife. So anyway, yes,
I do have a pretty understanding wife.
He may or may not be doing Has Been Hotel on Valentine's Day. Robert, show us where you pissed from.
So I cover mixed martial arts and professional wrestling over at 411mania.com, in addition to talking TV here on occasion and movies on Damn You Hollywood pretty much every week, apart from January, which we have its own special title for, and February, which we will come up with a special title for. Because
January is fuck you, it's January.
I know.
February is, as we say here on the Rattle Legend Broadcasting Network, in February we do black shit, in June we do gay shit, and in July we do shark shit.
Not wrong.
Yeah, no matter the month, we're doing shit.
That's correct.
That's correct. So Mark already went over some of the schedule for that, so looking forward to a few of those. Genuinely looking forward to talking about at least the holdovers with Mark. The other two, we'll see. I've not finished. I'm partway through Maestro, and Bradley Cooper's prosthetic nose is just making me cross-eyed. That man so desperately wants an Oscar, and he's never going to get one, and it's amusing to me, though. But we will be talking about those. Again, I cover mixed martial arts and professional wrestling. MLW, when they have stuff on Thursday, I review, and they dumped 2 hours of their stuff last week. So you can find my review of MLW Reload. That was everything they had until they run their next show, and we'll just see how that goes. WWE SmackDown on Friday. It's our go-home show for the Royal Rumble, which is Saturday. As of this recording, I have not yet been asked to cover the Royal Rumble. We'll wait and see. I've been asked to cover the last 2 or 3 of them, so.
And I won't be covering the Royal Rumble because I'll be an adult onesie karaoke party.
I'm not sure which one of those is more horrifying.
You'll find out on TikTok.
I might indeed. And there is no UFC event on Saturday, kind of trying to stay out of the way of the Royal Rumble, I guess. But if you want a review of the last event, that was UFC 297, which brought out the worst people. I both love and hate when someone's popularity breaks through a bit of the MMA bubble and starts bringing in new people. Because it's nice to have more people, more fans, but then you have to deal with the people who you have to educate about everything. Oh no, the title changed hands on a split decision. Don't you have to actually beat the champion to be the champion? No, this is not a rule. It's a stupid axiom. It's not encoded anywhere in the rules. He got the split decision, ergo he won. Or people do... And Sean Strickland he penetrated a different portion of the cultural sphere, and they watched his fight, and you can argue that he won. I'm not saying there's not an argument to be made. I didn't score it for him, but that's just me. But now the worst takes come out, and that's always a headache.
You know what I'm doing on Saturdays now, so that we've run out of other stuff for me to republish? I'm going all the way back to the beginning of the 411 Ground and Pound radio show and starting to re-air those. Because why not play 10-year-old MMA reviews?
I mean, there's a lot of reasons not to, Mark. There's a lot of reasons not to.
Oh, we were so young back then. Young Jeffrey Harris and Sam Mercati and Scott Kachowski.
You had a good crew. You had a good crew for a while there.
Yep. All right, folks. Thank you.
Then I showed up.
I hope stop. Yes, and pirated my show. All right. Thank you for joining us here on our review of Disenchantment. For Robert Winfree and David Wright, I'm Mark Radulich. Be well, be safe, and behave.